The Journey of Islam Makhachev and Leo Kuntz, UFC debut story. It was a chilly November evening in 2015, and the MMA world was waiting in anticipation for the next big fighter to break into the UFC. Little did anyone know, a new star from Dagestan was about to make his presence known. Islam Makhachev, a fighter with an incredible grappling background and a strong, relentless style, was stepping into the octagon for the very first time. On the other side of the cage stood Leo Kuntz, an experienced fighter from the United States, looking to make a name for himself and prove that he was ready for the big leagues. Islam Makhachev, a glimpse into his rise. Islam Makhachev was no stranger to combat sports before his UFC debut. Trained in the rigorous systems of Sambo, a martial art born in the brutal landscapes of Russia, Islam's journey started in the remote mountains of Dagestan, a region known for producing some of the finest fighters the world had ever seen. Growing up in such an environment, Islam was destined to be a fighter. He trained under Khabib Nurmagomedov, a legendary coach and the father of Khabib Nurmagomedov, who would go on to become one of the greatest UFC champions of all time. Under the watchful eye of Khabib, Islam honed his skills, focusing on a blend of judo and sambo with an emphasis on controlling the opponent, neutralizing strikes, and dominating from the clinch. He was known for his excellent wrestling technique, his calm demeanor in the cage, and his ability to turn the tide of any fight with his ground game. By the time he made his way to the UFC, Islam had already proven himself to be a dangerous, well-rounded athlete. The stage was set at UFC Fight Night 101 in Melbourne, Australia, on November 28, 2015. Islam had a lot to prove, and with his first UFC appearance, there was pressure not only on him, but on the legacy of his mentor, Khabib, and his friend, Khabib Nurmagomedov. Islam knew the eyes of the world would be on him, but he had a quiet confidence. This was his moment. Leo Kuntz, the veteran fighter. Across the cage stood Leo Kuntz, a fighter with a wealth of experience in mixed martial arts. Hailing from the United States, Kuntz was a seasoned competitor who had fought for organizations like Strikeforce and RFA before making his way into the UFC. With a record of 18 wins and 5 losses, Kuntz was no stranger to adversity, but he had found success in his ability to take the fight to his opponents. Known for his grappling heavy style, Kuntz was a well-rounded fighter with strong wrestling, submissions, and a knack for grinding out victories. While Kuntz may not have been a superstar, he was the type of fighter who could surprise anyone on any given night. His UFC debut would be no different, an opportunity to showcase his skills against a young and hungry fighter on the rise. Kuntz had no intention of being a stepping stone in Makhachev's career. He had a job to do, and he was determined to show that he had what it took to be successful in the UFC. The fight, a battle of ground and control. The fight began, and from the very first bell, it was clear that Makhachev was on a different level. Islam didn't waste time in feeling out his opponent. He went straight into his game, pressuring Kuntz with his superior wrestling and clinch work. Every time Kuntz tried to get some space, Islam was there, controlling him in the clinch, pressing him against the cage, and using his powerful takedowns to bring the fight to the ground. Islam's ground control was the story of the fight. He took Kuntz down with ease, asserting dominance from the top position. Kuntz tried to scramble, but Makhachev's composure and grappling skills were too much. Islam was able to pass guard, maintain control, and even work from dominant positions, always looking for an opening to either improve his position or finish the fight. Kuntz showed his own resilience, refusing to tap out or give in. But Islam's pace was relentless. By the end of the 3 rounds, it was clear to everyone watching that Islam had been the superior fighter. He was calm, calculated, and in complete control. Kuntz, on the other hand, struggled to get anything going. Every time he attempted to make a move, Makhachev would stifle him with his overwhelming presence and technical precision. Islam Makhachev won the fight by unanimous decision, with the judges scoring the fight 30-27 in his favor across the board. The aftermath. A new star in the UFC. Islam's victory was significant, but it was also just the beginning. It was a promising debut, but the fight showed that he still had room to grow. His technical mastery on the ground was evident, but there were questions about his striking and overall versatility that remained. Nevertheless, his debut performance left a lasting impression, and many believed he was a future contender in the UFC's lightweight division. As for Kuntz, his loss in the debut fight was not a setback, but rather a testament to the sheer skill and talent that Islam brought to the table. Kuntz's resilience was praised, but his inability to deal with Makhachev's grappling and pace left many questioning whether Kuntz had what it took to succeed in the UFC against top-tier competition. Despite the loss, Kuntz would continue to fight, but it was clear that the UFC was not his final destination. Controversy before the fight, the calm before the storm. While the fight itself was a relatively straightforward affair, there was a certain air of controversy leading up to it. Kuntz had a reputation for being a tough, gritty competitor, and he wasn't shy about his plans to upset the young Dagestani fighter. Some fans, particularly those outside the hardcore MMA community, hadn't yet heard of Islam, and Kuntz's trash-talking fueled speculation that he had a solid chance to dethrone the rising star. In the lead-up to the fight, Kuntz was confident, but he also made remarks that hinted at the pressure of facing an opponent with such a well-established legacy. Many UFC fans saw it as a chance for Kuntz to knock out one of the most hyped prospects in the UFC. Kuntz's words, mixed with his own brand of self-belief, created an intriguing narrative, one that seemed to echo the kind of chip on the shoulder story that so often leads to a shocking upset. But when the fight started, it was clear that this was not going to be a story of an upset. Instead, it was a showcase of Makhachev's dominance in a weight class that was becoming known for grappling powerhouses. The Dagestani fighter was on a collision course with greatness, and no one was going to stop him from achieving his goals. Controversy after the fight, the rising star's path forward. After the fight, Islam Makhachev's name started to spread like wildfire. His victory solidified his reputation as one of the most promising prospects in the UFC. However, some critics were quick to point out that Kuntz wasn't quite the level of competition expected for someone who had been hyped up so much. There were whispers in the MMA community that Islam needed more stiff competition before anyone could truly claim him as a future champion. Despite the critics, Makhachev's performance wasn't lost on the UFC brass, and he would go on to face increasingly tougher opponents. The win over Kuntz became a pivotal moment in the career of Islam Makhachev, and it would only be a matter of time before the lightweight division started to take notice. And so, the stage was set for Makhachev's meteoric rise. But like all great stories, this was just the first chapter. The world would soon see that this win was just the beginning of a much bigger saga, a saga that would eventually lead him to UFC Gold and cement his place as one of the best lightweights the sport has ever seen. That's the tale of Islam Makhachev's UFC debut and the journey that lay ahead.